I am a 40-year-old man and my ex-wife is a 40-year-old woman. We were divorced during infection 19, 4 years ago. It was messy, and her family was directly responsible for it. Backstory. My ex and I had been friends since elementary school, over 20 years of friendship before we got married. We had similar interests, took multiple of the same classes, and even went out on one super awkward date during our high school years. We both had crushes on each other forever, but timing and other people being in the picture held off our love until we were 32 years old. At which point we reconnected, and all of our past condensed into this relationship of insanely strong bonds as a result of knowing each other for so long. This is where I get myself in trouble, I think. I had known this person for so long and spent so much time with her when we were younger that I thought I knew her true self. Turns out people change. I don't want to get into specifics for the sake of anonymity, but let's just say that morally, politically, and in many other ways, this person had done a complete 180. However, I was too dumbstruck in love with her. I mean, how great of a story is that? A childhood crush comes back in your 30s and everything is perfect. I hit the jackpot, or so I thought. For context, and to get the best help and advice, we both grew up in a very liberal setting, aligned on worldviews. The person I married was still that same person, but with a different spirit inside her. We dated for roughly 4 years before getting married. We were married for only a year, and divorced during the second year of infection 19 in 2021. We were forced to move into her family house with her mom and siblings. This was the beginning of the end. When my ex and I were together, it was perfect. I couldn't imagine a better relationship. All the things. However, there were some past events in the family that led to some really strong trauma bonding. This is where living with this insanely dysfunctional family came to unalive the marriage, although I acknowledge it probably would have never worked out if this is how it ended. The countless days of being in an environment that was not conducive to what I thought was our lifestyle really took its toll. I was overpowered by the family and my thoughts and opinions. All the while, my ex-wife just stood by silently while I stood my ground against a couple of her family members. The incident. It was the Friday after Thanksgiving. My ex and I were winding down and got into an argument. It was about how we cooked the leftover meal for everyone. This was a regular couple's spat. It wasn't heated, there was no name-calling, just mostly a hey, we could have done this better discussion. This is when things flew off the rails. Apparently, her brother had been listening to our conversation, weird, and decided he'd butt into it. I'm going to chalk it up to him and his buddy being very drunk. He got into my face about the way I was talking to my sister. My ex doesn't know how to handle the situation. She's always hated confrontation and just kind of goes deer in the headlights as this guy unloads on me. It started with the argument, which, if you've ever been married or in a long-time relationship, you know is a natural thing. It's just about how you handle the problem that makes your relationship grow. He then proceeded to lay into me about being a loser, which is when I stopped taking the abuse and finally snapped. I'm a successful man with a great job. This guy can barely hold down a job and hasn't paid taxes in like 5 years. I tried to talk him down, all the while my ex was just embarrassed and silent in the corner. I packed a bag, called an Uber, and spent the night at my parents' house. The next day, I received a picture texted to me. It was literally all of my belongings boxed up and put out in the front yard. It's not as bad as it sounds, as the front yard has a gate around it, but it's still absolutely messed up. Turns out, her brother has had enough of me and convinced my wife to pack up my things and kick me to the curb. I filed for divorce within a couple of months. It was finalized, all said and done. Nope. Fast forward to July 2024, my ex-wife, out of the blue, contacted me. I literally had zero contact for nearly 4 years. She and her family had moved across the country to a different state. She was apologetic, said she was moving back to the town I live in and would like to meet up and see if we can fix things. Now for an update. Oh my God, Reddit, the years of therapy, roughly 10 years, the emotional intelligence I've gained. Everything was all completely flipped upside down. Absolute tailspin. Drinking too much, skipping out on work and friend functions. Just a complete mess. It's messed up. What I'm struggling with and what I need advice on is this. I love this woman. I will always love this woman. This woman has completely broken my trust and ruined my life. I can never go back to her. I'm stuck in this cyclical anxiety and stress loop. How can I ever trust her? But I really want to give her another shot, especially if what she's saying is true. Please help. Reddit. Side note, I've left details out of certain parts on purpose. If you need things filled in, let me know and I'll do my best. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Has she completely cut ties with her family? Has she gone to therapy and worked through the toxicity and her response to it? What about the other incompatibilities that you've somewhat glossed over amid all the family drama? Frankly, I don't think you have anything to gain from exploring this. You're still hanging on to this idea that you were destined to be together from the moment you met as kids, and reality has not borne that out. Tell her you wish her well, but that's as fixed as things are going to get, and schedule an emergency session or 5 with your therapist if you need help moving on from there. Comment 2. She left you because her brother told her to. Original poster. That in and of itself should have ended the life of whatever love you had for her, in my opinion. I'm sure she regrets it, but she was still a grown 36-year-old adult woman who basically hid in the corner while your brother came after you and who caved and decided to divorce you because that's what her brother wanted. Her family dynamic is problematic. She is problematic. You may still be in love with her, but she's spineless and silly, and you would be setting yourself up to be hurt again. Don't do that to yourself, man. Sometimes love just isn't enough. Now for the update. The day after the message from my ex-wife, she hit me up again, asking to meet for coffee at this diner we used to go to. Didn't wanna, but I reluctantly agreed. I figured I needed to clear the air about some stuff, even if it meant facing whatever this was head on. I knew I still had feelings for her, but I didn't know if it was love or just habit. So meeting her for coffee it was. I pull up to the diner, and she's already there, looking nervous but kind of eager too. She starts off saying she's back in town for good and feels like she needs to make things right. Okay. I wasn't really sure what that meant, but she seemed all in. She starts reminiscing about the good times we had, which was a bit of a mixed bag for me. Sure, we had some great moments, but it felt like she was trying to sell me on something, and I wasn't sure I wanted to buy. Halfway through our meal, I notice her casually checking her phone. Not cool. I get that people do that, but with everything between us, it just rubbed me the wrong way. She finally admits that she's been in therapy too, and has worked on herself since our divorce. I told her about my own growth and how I was doing, but I could feel that old tension lurking in the background, the one that comes from all the stuff we've been through. As we leave the diner, she asks if I want to join her for dinner at her parents' house next weekend for some family gathering. I hesitate, but then I think, maybe I need to go. I could use the time to gauge where we're at and what she's really after. So I agreed. The week leading up to the dinner, I was a bit of a mess. Not in a bad way, just mentally preparing myself for whatever was going to happen. I couldn't shake the memories of all the times her brother and I had butted heads. I knew he wouldn't just accept my presence at the dinner table. Not a chance. On the day of the dinner, I roll up to her parents' house feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. They welcomed me with open arms, which was a nice surprise. I noticed her brother wasn't around, and honestly, that put me at ease a bit. We enjoyed a meal that night filled with laughter and stories, and it felt good. I felt like I belonged there with them, like I was part of the family. About halfway through dinner, her brother shows up out of nowhere. Total party crasher. The atmosphere shifted immediately. I tried to play it cool, but I could tell he was sizing me up. He confronts me right at the dinner table, bringing up the fight that led to our divorce. I tried to calm things down, telling him it was in the past and we were beyond that now, but he wasn't having it. He made some cutting remarks, and I could feel everyone at the table getting tense. My ex-wife tried to step in, asking her brother to back off. He refused to listen, of course. I stood up and said I wasn't going to be disrespected in her family home. That's when he accused me of abandoning her without explanation. I felt cornered. We ended up in a heated exchange, and it was like the room got smaller. Her brother gets all up in my face, and I just snapped. My ex-wife finally steps in, telling her brother to stop, but it only makes him more furious. At that point, I just couldn't take it anymore. I told them I was leaving, and as I walked out, I overheard her brother mocking me, saying I'll always be a coward. Real classy. The next day, I get a message from my ex-wife apologizing for the whole mess and asking to talk. We meet up, and she expresses her frustration about her brother's behavior. She admits that he's always been protective and that it's a complicated family situation. I could tell she was genuinely upset about how things went down at dinner. Our conversation took a turn when she told me she's been casually dating someone since moving back. I wasn't mad, but it stung a bit. It felt like I was holding on to something that she had already moved on from. We ended that conversation without any real resolution, still feeling conflicted. A few days later, she texted me again, asking if I wanted to join her at a local art exhibit. I hesitated, but decided to go. I figured, why not? I wanted to keep the lines of communication open, even if it felt like we were just going in circles. At the art exhibit, we engaged in small talk. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She was texting a lot during the event, and it started to bug me. Eventually, I asked her about her relationship, and she admitted it was still ongoing. It was casual, but still. The conversation got strained, and she expressed frustration over my discomfort, saying she wasn't asking for exclusivity. I left the exhibit that night feeling a sense of loss. It was like I was watching someone else live the life I should have been a part of, and it hurt. In the weeks that followed, our communication dwindled. I stopped reaching out, and honestly, it felt like the right thing to do. I was tired of feeling like a spare tire in her life. Eventually, I learned through social media that she had officially started a new relationship. Mini update. After seeing my ex-wife with someone else on social media, I decided to fully step back. I realized I was holding on to a past that wasn't meant to be, and that my own happiness mattered more. I've been focusing on myself, spending time with friends, and pursuing new interests. Am I the idiot for refusing to let my overbearing sister control my every move? I am a 20-year-old international student on a post-graduation work permit. My sister, who is 43 years old, and her husband, who is 49 years old, are the only family I have, and vice versa for them. They have been my all-time supporters with education, both financially and in all means, and well-being in general. For context, I am not a disciplined person in general and used to stay in my comfort zone. My sister has anxiety, does not communicate at all with the rest of the family, and has been stressed financially and with health problems. When I first moved, my not finding a job put them in a difficult position with my parents, as they had to ask them for more money. When I did find a job, I lived alone for 8 months until I graduated, but they paid my first and last rent. I overcame my social anxiety working as a server and was very responsible. I had started dating someone new, and she was supportive. As I worked past midnight, my sister asked for an "I'm home" text, which I sometimes forgot, so I offered to turn on my location. She didn't want to at first, but it got convenient for both of us. One day, I took the day off from work to go to a networking event they had found, but I ran late and chickened out at the last minute, so I didn't attend. My sister and brother-in-law checked my location and said I should take an Uber, as this was very important. She checked in 1 hour later, asking me when I got there, and I didn't see her text. 2 hours later, she asked where I was and called me repeatedly, texting that she would call my roommate. I answered her text 1 hour later and said I was okay and with friends. I refused to call her, and she said I was not mature enough to live on my own and didn't deserve the freedom they had given me. She told me I would move back in with them immediately after school ended or go back home to my parents. She mentioned going to the hospital for my niece the next day, but I didn't pay attention because I was fixated on the argument. I told her she knew I was okay, and that was all my obligation. We didn't talk for a while, and they moved in the process, and I couldn't help them. Then we had arguments again because I wanted to spend the summer continuing to live alone. They needed help financially and with the baby. After lots of arguments on the phone, I decided to move, quit my server job, and do long distance with my boyfriend. I am happy with the decision, but it is again exhausting living with her. She has lots of rules and rituals around the house to be followed, and she updates them regularly. So one thing you do that is okay may not be okay the next day. I am expected to clean and mop every day, get the breakfast ready, be present at all breakfasts which take 3 hours, get dinner ready for another 3 hours, and if I do not, or do something she dislikes slightly, I receive backlash. She even stopped me from using a menstrual cup I bought because it would give her an infection. I'm doing better with the job search in information technology, but when she criticizes me constantly, I burn out. I turned off my location a couple of times on trips with my boyfriend to see how often she checks it, and she always noticed immediately. It made me feel watched and uncomfortable, but I kept it on so she wouldn't start an argument. Not long after, I got fired from my new job and decided to spend the day outside to feel better. She asked me if I was going to meet my boyfriend. I said no, and then she told me not to sleep with a random man. To be clear, I have never been to a party in my life, never got home late, and am not even a social person at all. Literally the last thing I would do. I was confused and left the house to meet my boyfriend. We got a room and later wanted to spend the night. I didn't want my sister to know I was in the same city after what she said, so I turned off my location, lied, and told her I was on the bus to visit my boyfriend and would be back tomorrow. She called me twice, and I said the same thing on the phone, but she was mad that my location was turned off. I told her I was okay and would be back tomorrow. She insisted I was lying and suspected I was with another man other than my boyfriend, doing drugs, etc. I told her it bothered me that she checks my location often and that I would answer texts and calls immediately. She said, "What if I got kidnapped, etc.?" But I said that is not practical. I ended up turning the location on after she threatened to call the police several times. I came home the next day and did not speak to her. 2 weeks later, we were still not speaking, and my boyfriend was going to visit me. I told them I would go to the library later that day. She guessed I would be meeting my boyfriend and asked me to babysit my niece while they did shopping to uncover my lie. She had never asked me to stay home with her alone, and I am literally with them cooking and babysitting 24/7, other than once in 2 weeks when I see my boyfriend. So I said I was busy today and would leave soon. She called me a pathological liar. 1 hour later, my brother-in-law called me and asked to have a meeting about the business they were wanting to start that would primarily benefit me. I noticed from his voice that my sister was listening, and she made him call to trap me. I told him I was free any day but today, and if I was given notice, I would make the meeting happen. She texted me to shower after I got home at 8 p.m. She tracks what I do at home constantly, bursts into my room with no knocking or hesitation, and checks my screen to see if I am working. How do I talk to her about this, even though I know she will say very heavy things back at me? How do I address my concerns and set ground rules? To add, thank you to everyone who commented and offered their support. Because of my family and culture, it was hard for me to see how abnormal this is, and I have been blaming myself partially. Now I am relieved to see I have options to address this. I'm putting my best efforts into finding a stable job and moving out. Until I can do that, I will set boundaries and protect myself mentally. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. OP, your sister does not respect you, and it sounds like it's getting progressively worse the longer you live with her. I learned about this quiz from another Redditor. Try doing it instead of your partner. Think your sister. From your replies, you very much want to continue a good relationship with boundaries. But for as long as you live under her roof and under her control, she won't respect you enough to go along with the boundaries you set. Comment 2. Get a job and move out. Quitting and moving in with her was a bad idea. You don't need to live with her while trying to get a job in information technology. She acts like she's your mom or warden. She didn't give you freedom. You're an adult, and she can't do anything. The police wouldn't have even entertained her nonsense that you turned off your location. I would live in my car before I spent another minute in her house. What do your actual parents say about what she's doing? Now for the update. I'm in a bad living situation with my sister and her husband, and I finally tried to set some boundaries. A couple of weeks after my last post, I found a new job at a local cafe. Thank God. I was feeling a lot more stable, and my sister even organized a family dinner to celebrate. She invited our parents and our brother, which was a bit much, but whatever. I knew she was trying to be nice. So at the dinner, everything started off okay. We were all having fun, and then my sister had to ruin it. She brought up my job situation, and she was like, you really need to be responsible now. And my brother chimed in, joking about how I was still living at home and that I needed to grow up. And the parents nodded in agreement. It was so awkward. I just wanted to disappear. I decided to keep quiet, which was probably the best move at the time. After dinner, my sister insisted on checking my phone for the work schedule. She said it was for safety concerns. I mean, come on. I refused to let her see my phone, and that led to a heated argument right in front of our family. My parents tried to calm things down a bit, and they even suggested that my sister lighten up. But, of course, she accused me of being ungrateful for her support. Like, what support? The parents were also concerned about her controlling nature, which I was kind of happy about, but it didn't help the situation. The next day, I planned to talk to my sister about boundaries. I thought maybe she would listen and we could figure this out. But she reacted defensively when I tried to bring it up. She was like, it's for your own good. And when I pushed back, she said it was her responsibility to keep me safe. She stormed out of the room, saying she didn't understand why I was being so difficult. I was honestly just exhausted. A week later, our family gathered to celebrate my brother's birthday at a local restaurant. I was nervous about it, but I thought maybe it would be a good distraction. At the restaurant, my sister kept making comments about my choices. She was like, "Why are you still working at a cafe?" And the family looked shocked. I was so embarrassed. Then she demanded to know why I was acting out. The parents tried to mediate a bit, but the tension just escalated. We ended up having a public confrontation in the middle of the restaurant, and my brother tried to defuse the situation with some humor, but it just fell flat. My sister stormed off, saying I was ungrateful for everything she had done for me. The parents were disappointed and suggested family therapy. I declined therapy, but I agreed to a calm discussion with my sister later on. A few days later, I texted my sister asking to talk about our relationship. I was kind of nervous, but knew I had to do it. She reluctantly agreed to meet at a coffee shop, which was good. During the meeting, I laid out clear boundaries regarding privacy. I told her I needed my own space and that I was an adult. She initially resisted, of course, but eventually acknowledged that I was right and that we needed to change things up. We reached a tentative agreement on respecting each other's space. I felt a bit better after that, but I knew it was going to be a long journey. Edit: my brother's birthday was the final straw. It was supposed to be a fun gathering, but my sister's comments and accusations made it incredibly uncomfortable. I knew I had to act. Am I the idiot for wanting to focus on my career while my girlfriend wants to start a family? I'm a 25-year-old man, and my girlfriend is a 27-year-old woman. We disagree on baby on a living. We are taking steps to prevent pregnancy. She has an IUD, and I always wear a condom. I recognize that I am more anxious and paranoid than most. Even with these protections in place, I sometimes get lost in anxious thoughts at the idea that my life could change in such a drastic way. We have been dating for 2 amazing years and have just moved in together, and this is the only issue that my girlfriend and I have had, and we both love each other very much. To the issue at hand, I believe that we should prioritize our professional lives, saving for a home, and becoming the best versions of ourselves so that when we do have children, we can best support them. In other words, if she were to get pregnant at a time when we were not ready, I would advocate for baby on a living. I fully understand that it is her body and her choice at the end of the day. She believes that if pregnancy were to occur, we would keep the child because she believes that life begins at conception, and that to abort would be for selfish reasons, and that one would need to own the situation and step up. She believes that we could make it work, and people have made things work with less. Though I agree that financially it could, in theory, work, I've told her that 1, mentally, I would not be ready, and 2, I want to have a higher quality of life than most, and I've worked hard to get where I am in my career. I do not want to settle for an average quality of life and want to work hard for my family and provide as much as I can. I believe having a child when not ready would jeopardize my ability to reach those goals. Where we both agree, and I get a bit confused, is that we both agree that should there be any health complications with her or the baby, significant quality of life considerations, etc., that she would choose to abort. Later in life, after having kids, I would also plan on getting a vasectomy so that this issue surely doesn't come up again. I would do so now if that were an option, and there wasn't a risk of being unable to have children of my own. So she really is only pro-life in the instance that she becomes pregnant and the baby is healthy. I have no idea how to navigate this issue. Neither of us has changed our mindset over the past 2 years, and when it has come up, I have had to remind myself that the chances are very low and the whole issue gets swept under the rug. When it comes up again, it's usually a couple of days or a week of awkwardness and uneasy feelings. Does anyone know how this situation can be dealt with? I would very much appreciate some help as I try to make the best of this situation. Thank you. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You're already using 2 effective forms of birth control, so your risks are low, but not zero. If you don't want any risk, you stop having intimacy. Or you get a vasectomy, and then when or if you both want kids, they can extract sperm and do artificial insemination. Reversals become less successful over time. I personally just wouldn't date someone whose views were diametrically opposed to mine if I were a man without a vasectomy. You get no choice in the matter. And even if you align initially, a woman can change her mind later. That said, she's 27, so I can appreciate that if she wants kids, she would sort it out at this point, even if it were an accident. She doesn't have as much time as you to wait. Comment 2. Even a pro-choice person who might consider baby on a living for some circumstances might not want to get one in any or every circumstance. Even someone who might identify that timing isn't the best or most practical might decide to continue the pregnancy. If you're having intimacy and she gets pregnant, unlikely, but possible. Though ectopic pregnancy is a high risk with IUDs, it's ultimately her choice what to do. You're not obligated to stay in a relationship with someone who has a different desire or life plan, but even someone who agrees that timing isn't great might still decide not to have a baby on a living. Now for the update. My parents had me and Olivia over for my mom's birthday. My grandma was there too. She's always asking about family planning and stuff, and of course, she brought it up during dinner. She asked when we were having kids, and my dad joked that he wanted more grandkids soon. Olivia smiled, but I could see her stiffen in her chair. I knew she was annoyed. After dinner, my grandma pulled me aside while we were cleaning up. She asked if we were planning on starting a family. I just said something vague about focusing on our careers right now. She looked disappointed and told me I should reconsider, mentioning how family is everything. It's just her thing, always pushing for kids. I was trying to avoid the topic as much as I could. Later that night, Olivia and I sat on the couch and she suddenly brought up the conversation. I tried to lighten the mood by joking about how old-fashioned my grandma's views are. Olivia snapped back, saying it's not funny and that my family doesn't respect our choices. We tried to keep it down so my family in the other room wouldn't hear, but it was hard. She said she felt pressured by my family's expectations about kids. I mean, I got where she was coming from, but it wasn't fair for her to blame my family for our disagreement. I know it was a little unfair of me to ask her to ignore my family's views on this, but I was kind of just over it at this point. She was annoyed with my family and I was annoyed with her. The drive home was silent and awkward. We left my parents' house with some tension between us. 2 days later, we went to a friend's wedding, which was supposed to be a fun distraction. At the reception, I saw Olivia talking to one of her old friends, Sarah. I noticed Sarah had just had a baby. They were discussing parenting, and I thought that was a little weird. I tried to change the topic by bringing up travel plans we had talked about, but Olivia seemed distant. She didn't seem that into the whole thing. A week later, I planned a small dinner at our place to try and reconnect. I cooked her favorite meal, hoping to ease whatever awkwardness was going on. During dinner, I tried to steer the conversation toward our future, but Olivia went silent, just pushing her food around on the plate. I asked if she was okay, and she broke down, saying she felt overwhelmed with everything. I suggested we both write down what we wanted for our lives, just to see where we matched up. She agreed. The next day, Olivia handed me her list, and I noticed one item on there: have kids. We had a heated discussion about it, and it ended with her saying she wanted to rethink our relationship. I tried to convince her that we could work through it, but she seemed set on her decision. She said she needed time alone to figure things out. I spent the night at a friend's place, trying to process everything. The following week, she told me she was moving out temporarily to clear her head. The ending wasn't what I expected, but I knew I had to focus on growth moving forward. To answer a few questions, my girlfriend and I are still in a relationship, but it's very different now. She is currently living separately to gain some clarity on her thoughts. We both care about each other, but we're prioritizing communication and understanding of our individual wants and needs. I don't know if we will end up working through it together, but I know I need to focus on my own personal growth and understanding of my priorities moving forward. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.